Welcome into Pressbox Live. I'm Stan the Fan Charles of Pressbox and PressBoxOnline.com. And with me is Luke Jackson. And you'll notice that absent is one Ross Grimsley. Ross is away with his wife Bird. They are on the Orioles team cruise. And we hope that the Grimsleys and all those folks have a real nice time and have smooth sailing, as they say, when it comes to being on the water. Luke Jackson and I are here. We are brought to you, as always, by AJ Michaels Heating and Air Conditioning in Baltimore and Annapolis at ajmichaels.com. And they ask you a question: what company has the expertise and technology to make your home substantially more energy efficient, comfortable, and even virus free? The answer is AJ Michaels Heating and Air Conditioning, Baltimore and Annapolis. And we're also brought to you by Superbook Sports. Superbook, long known as the most trusted name in Vegas. And now you can use promo code StanCharles23 or Glenn Clark 23 to score up to $250 with their first bet bonus. Win or lose, they will match your first bet up to $250 with promo code StanCharles23, all one word with no spaces. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. And Luke, I went to Superbook Sports this morning to check on the odds for the two championship games. And they have the Baltimore Ravens minus 3 points. And they've got San Francisco over Detroit minus 7. Your initial thoughts on that before we turn to baseball?
I think those spreads sound about right. I was guessing before I saw those spreads that the Ravens would probably be like a 3.5 point favorite, and that San Francisco would probably be about a 6.5 point favorite. So that's right where I thought it would be. I don't have any initial lean at this point. That might be a lot of points in the NFC game, but I'm not certain. Like, I'm just not sure. What do you
Well,
think?
I think the Lions, despite two impressive victories over the last two Sundays, they remain sort of an unknown quantity in the most important games, and Tampa Bay hung with them for 2 3/4 of that football game. They're right there with them.
Yeah, and I thought Baker Mayfield, up until the last interception, played really, really well.
Yeah.
I thought he was outstanding on that final drive of the first half. That really got Tampa Bay into that game, tie the score up at 10. So I thought that was terrific. Really got Mike Evans activated down the field, which was a big key for them. But really, in the second half, Tampa Bay's defense just couldn't
Defense
stop.
just
They
couldn't
couldn't
stop.
slow
Couldn't
down
get
the
him off
Lions.
the field.
The
Couldn't
Lions
get
have a
him off.
lot of weapons.
Yeah.
So do the Niners. So this is going to be two offenses with a ton of talented weapons. And you look at the Lions, they've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, they've got Sam Laporta, they have Jahmyr Gibbs, who is electrifying out of the backfield. They're a lot of fun to watch. And when they're at their best is when Jared Goff is allowed to just play point guard. Not try to be Superman or anything like that. Just play point guard with all those great weapons he has. And that's what he was able to do in that second half in particular. And Tampa Bay just had a little trouble keeping up there.
The Detroit Lions turned out to be the perfect place for him to go
Mm-hmm.
with Dan Campbell taking over. They didn't have to rush to get a good or great quarterback. They weren't really ready to go anywhere,
Right.
but they were able to show some patience, which is very rare
Yep.
with quarterbacks in the NFL. You sort of every season is a make or break. You look at players that must have been equally as talented to Jared Goff in college. Sam Darnold, is a total bust in the NFL. You can name 5 or 6 of them over the recent crop of quarterbacks that have been. The kid that's from Alabama, that's with the Panthers.
Bryce Young.
Bryce, I mean, I still think they'll they might luck out and get something out of him, but it's not as easy as it seems. And Jared Goff was a work in progress.
Yeah. And the thing is that as the Lions were being rebuilt by Dan Campbell and company, that gave also Jared Goff time to rebuild himself.
Yeah.
So they both were able to rebuild sort of at the same timeline. which is not something you see often. And I remember when they first made that Stafford deal, Goff was almost like the salary throw-in. That basically it seemed like Detroit was just taking on Goff to get more picks,
Yep.
in return. But after the deal was made, Dan Campbell said something to the effect, "No, we think that Goff could be our quarterback
Yep.
for the foreseeable future." And remember, Goff and Campbell were 4-19-1, I believe, at
Wow.
one point last
Yeah,
year, and
that's
then it
usually you don't come back. You don't come back.
exactly, and then it flipped, and then by the end of the year last year, they were one of the 14 best teams. They really should have, quote unquote, been a playoff team last year because they were good
Yep.
enough to be that. There were worse teams that got in, and then this year they took the step forward to make it like a full year kind of deal. So it's been awesome to see. Detroit is a great sports town.
It is. It is
It's not
terrific.
a good one. It's a great one, and it's
Yeah.
really good to see that place full with Lions fans.
Yeah. I don't want to dig too deep into football, but just one more thing. That game, what was so intriguing for me for that game is I thought Mayfield and Goff were almost mirror images of one another. Baker Mayfield had to go from the top of the heap, the
Hmm.
number one pick,
Right.
and he fell out where barely anybody wanted him, and it took him a landing spot here. And again, I think part of the reason they were able to just sort of roll with him is other than quarterback position, they weren't going anywhere, you know.
Right.
And
Right.
he made himself over, and he's made himself a wealthy man, you know,
And the
because
other thing,
he's going to get a nice contract.
yeah, and the other thing with Tampa Bay was that they also needed a quarterback to come cheap
Yep,
because their cap was in such disarray after the all-in
great
Tom
point.
Brady
Yep,
years, and what was left over from that they really needed a quarterback to come in on the cheap and play effectively. Well, they got more than they bargained for with Mayfield. I think they
yep,
paid him something like 6+ million after incentives this year. I don't think there was a bigger bargain in football than that.
yep.
You know what I mean?
Great point. Great point. Luke, I thought we'd take this week, absent Ross Grimsley, to dig in and look at the environment that the Baltimore Orioles play in, and that's the American League East, with a little less than a month to go before spring training starts. Last year, Orioles 101-61, first place. Second place, Tampa Bay 99-63.
Mhm.
After that incredible start they got off to the first 2 months, they gradually came back to earth and then got strong again in
Right.
the last two-thirds of September. Toronto finished in third place, 89-73. New York Yankees in fourth place at 82-80, and the Red Sox, I think for the third time in the last 6 or 7 years, they
Hmm.
finished in last place at 78-84. I thought we'd sort of take the temperature and dip our sticks in the oil and see what we come up with each of these teams. Does one of these teams jump off the bat at you that's by far the most improved?
Well, one of those teams got Juan Soto. So
Yeah,
I would probably say the team that got Juan Soto is the most improved because the moves around the division, other than that, haven't been plentiful, I would
yeah,
say. And it might not be the only division that can say that because look at how many notable free agents are still available. I mean, this offseason, as most of them are now,
been
it's
very
moved at a
slow.
crawl.
Yeah,
And as we were saying before we went on the air, I don't know if that's great for the game. Fans like a flurry of moves, and which is really what the winter meetings used to be. It's not
yep,
anymore.
yep.
So yeah, I would say the Yankees are probably the most improved just because they got Juan Soto. Uh, but yeah, so yeah, I would say the Yankees. Just I'm not even sure off the top of my head what else they did, but I know they got Juan Soto.
The Yankees, they picked up Soto, of course. They also added Cody Morris, who
Hmm.
they got for Estevan Florial, went to Cleveland. And
Hmm.
Morris is a really interesting guy to me. I'm not saying he'll step up and get saves this year, and I'm not even saying he'll be on the team on opening day. I love his stuff,
Hmm.
and I think they got themselves a really good pitcher who could start, but I think he could be a dominant seventh, eighth inning guy. They also got Alex Verdugo, from the Red Sox. They gave up an interesting pitcher in that deal, Greg Weissert, who the Yankees really, I have a feeling, I mean, Boston really wanted and insisted upon that deal. But they've picked up Marcus Stroman, they've picked up Morris, they've picked up Verdugo, they've picked up, as you mentioned, Soto. They've lost Mike King, Isaac Falefa, and Josh Donaldson. He wasn't with the team in September last
Right.
year. So they look like they've still got some work to do and some money to probably spend.
Yeah, and also they got Marcus Stroman as
Yeah,
well.
picked up. I'm
Uh,
sorry, I thought I mentioned.
so basically, I thought that Michael King uh, looked really good for them in the second half of last year, and I thought in the last, I would say, 6 weeks of the season, there weren't many starters in the American League who looked better than him, and that was no small give for the Yankees to trade him to San Diego. And my guess is that San Diego insisted upon getting
Insisted
Michael
upon
King,
him. I think
and
you're
and, and
absolutely
and
right.
that perhaps the Yankees for a while there were trying to steer them toward Clark Schmidt, but but perhaps the Padres stood firm on the Michael King demand. So I don't think that's any small loss. Uh, Stroman is interesting in the sense that when he's right, it's a lot of ground balls, which fits in with this division. You like a pitcher who can throw strikes and keep the ball on the ground. There are some hitter friendly parks in this division. And then in terms of the other loss you mentioned, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, he had a nice year for the Yankees. When he was first brought in by Brian Cashman, the idea was that he would take over as the everyday shortstop. That's not really what his game is. And I do think that he'll be able to provide some value for the Blue Jays
Yeah,
in a utility role. When you keep him in that utility role, kind of that do everything guy that if you need someone to fill in the outfield, he could do that. If you need someone to fill in at third, short, second, he could do that. I think he's a valuable piece in that regard, and I think he'll help the Blue Jays that way.
I think your point on Mike King is absolutely right. Remember that Soto trade turned out so horrible for the Padres
Mm-hmm.
that there was a lot of face saving in that deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll bet that Preller really had to draw the line and say, if you want Soto,
Right.
we're getting King back in the deal. And
Mm-hmm.
I think Brian Cashman at first was balking at it until he realized that he thought it through, that what Preller had to get to save some face in that deal. And Michael King may be that. The one thing I'll throw at you about Michael King, and I know we're trying to talk about the AL East, but is saw an awful lot of pitchers hit innings
Mm-hmm.
points last
Right.
year and then were horrible
Right.
down the stretch. And Michael King never got to that because he wasn't a starter initially.
Yeah, it's a
Uh,
great point.
the Padres may think he's a 180 guy. He might not be this year. He might
Right.
be a 130 guy,
No, that's a great point.
and they got to pace themselves with
That's
it.
a great point.
Yeah. Um, the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays are an interesting team. Obviously, the fan base there, and I'm sure that Ross Atkinson and Mark Shapiro devastated by
Mm-hmm.
the canery that went on that led them to believe that they might really have. I mean, I know they knew what was going on, but I wondered whether they really believed that he was on a plane to Toronto to sign a deal or not. Devastating for the fan base.
Yeah, when your fans think that they have a very real chance to get Shohei Ohtani, and then it turns out, oh, I was probably going to the Dodgers all along
Right.
anyway. That's kind of a gut punch. There's no doubt about it. But the Dodgers were the obvious destination for 2 or 3 years now. So I don't think anyone was surprised that he signed with the Dodgers. I think people were surprised that he deferred nearly all of his $700 million contract until well into the future. So that was the surprise there. Now with the Blue Jays, Matt Chapman is still a free agent, productive
Mm-hmm.
player. I wouldn't say he's a great player, but he's a very good. I would
Defender,
say
yeah.
he's a very
Excellent
good defender
defender.
at third with a streaky bat. Is
Yeah.
what I would say. He's got some pop. They do have a hole at third base. I would not be surprised if they fill that by circling back around to Chapman. And really, the big storyline for the Blue Jays entering this season is that they have 2 more years with Vladdy in
Bo
Bichette.
Bichette. Yep.
And that group has not won a playoff game.
That is
They've
pretty
had a
staggering.
fair amount of regular season success. Haven't won the division, but they've had a fair amount of regular season success. Has not translated over into the postseason, and so
Big
that's going to be the storyline going into spring training.
big question mark for them. And I still think they have at least one more big move, maybe even two, because they've got a lot of money. Remember, they had Otani money.
Right.
And who knows whether they got into talking about deferrals or not.
Mhm.
They were in the hunt for Otani, so there's a lot of money to access there. Is Cody Bellinger a possibility there?
Ooh.
Uh, I keep hearing that they're interested in Bellinger. They're waiting for the price to go down a bit. And then could they be a sneaky team for a Blake Snell
Ooh.
or a Montgomery with a lot of money to spend? And one other factor is the Alek Manoah factor.
Right.
Is what the hell do they make of what happened to him last year? And what are the chances of him really coming back? Even if they've made up their mind that long term we don't want this guy, they need him to come back and reestablish value in the market.
No question about it. First of all, like, yeah, they've got to, and I'm sure that they've been trying to do this for the past several months, is diagnose what the hell happened.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the easy thing for some has been to just say, oh, he's got to get in better shape. So, not like he was in fantastic shape when he finished second in the Cy Young, a couple of years back. So, what was the difference between his near Cy Young campaign in 22 and getting lit up in the Florida Complex League in 23? Like, what happened? Like, what's the difference there? They've got to diagnose that. That's critically important for them moving forward. They got to figure out whether they can trust this guy.
A
And
lot of it is what's in between ears here, is what's in this guy's head,
right.
because it sounded like he suffered from a severe case of being an asshole, to be
And
perfectly blunt about it.
and
You know,
so certainly he got humbled last year.
yeah,
And so they've got to, and I imagine that they'll give him. What I would imagine is that they won't guarantee him a rotation spot going into spring, but they'll allow him to compete.
yeah.
Now, could a Jordan Montgomery fit? Could a Blake Snell fit? The issue is that these top names that you mentioned are all Scott Boras guys. And it takes a long time sometimes for Scott to come back down to earth on these demands that he has.
Oh yeah.
And
He thinks nothing of what a team is trying to plan for and map out.
it's
He's
not his
got his
problem.
own time. That's not his problem. Right.
Right. And the issue is that if you're waiting for the Boris prices to come down, there might be some other trade options that go off the board. There might be some lesser free agent options that go off the board. But Boris is also betting that you get desperate and cave to his demands
Yeah.
because he might have the only top end free agent options on the board right now. And so it's a difficult place to be. It's not where you want to be as a club, is to have to play Boris's game this time of year. But maybe that's the situation that they're in, because as we mentioned before, they're kind of on a time crunch to win.
Yeah.
Because I
Definitely.
assume that they have been very interested in trying to extend Vladdy and extend Bichette. But if it hasn't gotten done yet, it's probably not going to get done, because once players get to a certain point, they're far enough on the rainbow, so to speak, to get to the end of it. So I, I don't know. I think that you could absolutely be right, though, that maybe they do look at the top end of the free agent market here late.
One other issue with the Toronto Blue Jays, there's nobody that can watch Vladimir Guerrero Jr. play baseball that isn't amazed at the skill set. But in between that incredible year he had in 22, he's bookended it with 2 seasons in which he let himself physically go to pot, so to speak.
Right.
He's really been out of shape. And you question what this guy's real dedication is before you start talking to him about a seven to
Right.
9 year contract, 250, 270, or whatever ungodly number it is. They they've got an odd situation with him. To
Yeah,
me, to me,
and they've also got to figure out, what did he in 21, he was one of the best players in baseball. I think he hit close to 50 home runs. He was unbelievable. Otherwise, though, the exit velocities are still fantastic, but it's a lot of ground balls. It's a lot of 110-mile-an-hour ground ball double plays, so to speak. And they've got to figure out why he was able to hit the ball in the air so effectively in 21 that hasn't carried over to 22 or 23. And he certainly has to figure that out as well if he is going to get paid what he thinks he deserves in free agency, is to figure out why he hits the ball on the ground so much, and how he's going to be able to get the ball in the air more, to generate more power, and to actualize a lot of that natural pop he has. So I think
that
that's another issue for him as well.
that rotation of theirs, we talk about Manoah getting an opportunity to compete for the fifth spot. They've got Gosman, Berrios,
Mm-hmm.
and who are the other two right off?
Bassett,
Chris Bassett, who I like a lot, and who's the fourth guy?
Kikuchi.
They kind of popped out of my head, Bassett and Kikuchi. It's a solid four. There's no question about it. If Manoah is the Alek Manoah of 2022,
It's a great rotation.
it's a great rotation. No question about no question about it. Let's take a look at the Boston Red Sox, who have moved on. I won't call it shockingly, but I think that we thought that Chaim Bloom would get a little bit more time, given his age and reputation,
Mm-hmm.
than say Dave Dombrowski got in Boston. Um, and Dave Dombrowski, by the way, who many probably tossed aside, thought he was out of the game of baseball, other than potentially trying to help bring expansion baseball to Nashville. He's come back with a vengeance and proven he's really one of the top general managers in the game. There's no question about that. He's a big mover who sees he's got a real good quarterback's look at what's out there
Mm-hmm.
and all that. I think he's a big time baseball guy. But having said that, where the Boston Red Sox, they only gave him about 1,300 games, I think it
Mm-hmm.
was, and they gave Chaim Bloom roughly the same amount of time. I think actually
Yeah.
it's not 1,300 games; it's more like 800
Right.
games. I think
Right.
something like that, like three and a third seasons or
Right.
something. Were you shocked that Bloom is out and they brought in somebody like Craig Breslow?
No, I was not shocked that Bloom was out just because they let go of Dombrowski,
Yeah,
pretty shortly after winning a World Series. So, uh, but the real consternation I think up in Boston is that the payroll seems to be going down, down, down. Um, while the Red Sox
it does
owners,
seem like that,
while
doesn't it?
the Red Sox owners spend on other things, let's say, like soccer, et cetera, et cetera. So, it, the question is whether the Craig Breslow era will be very similar to the the Chaim Bloom era, where it's a lot of mid-tier signings, it's a lot of interesting signings in that realm, but not the big fish that the Red Sox used to compete with the Yankees for. And in this case, they would be competing with the Dodgers for. That
Yeah,
they haven't been that type of franchise.
nope. They've moved off of
When?
that dime.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
when's the last time? Probably
Well,
last time they
what
won a World Series, right?
organization, frankly, what organization seriously makes them with the capabilities to pay them
Right,
makes a Mookie Betts deal?
right,
I
right,
mean, those are few and far between. There's no
right.
question about
And I know the Red Sox, for really since that trade, have been really fed up with how management has gone about building the roster, building the organization. That said, I did think that Bloom made some good moves in
it.
terms
Yeah.
of some guys he drafted, et cetera, et cetera. So now you mentioned, like, I think when we were off the air, that you think that Giolito, who was one of the signings that
They
Breslow
brought
made.
in Giolito, but my bigger point to you was the fact that it was a pitching coach that the
Okay.
Orioles were interested in, but he never pitched for the Orioles, and he had pitched for the Yankees and the Red Sox, and the Yankees didn't have an opening. is Andrew Bailey. And I bet he was a teammate of Breslow's.
Right.
And then I saw something that looked like just a small little note in MLB trade rumors that they signed this guy Kyle Bodie,
Hmm.
uh, who's the who's the founder of Driveline, that data-driven baseball,
Development
facility
performance.
that
Yeah.
that does everything with metrics and all that. They teach the game, and he's now a special assistant to Breslow. He's been a pitching guru too. I would doubt that they signed Lucas Giolito for a good chunk of money, $38 million. We
Right.
were shocked. You and I were shocked that Flaherty got 14 million. Based on the year that Giolito had, other than 2 or 3 games or 5 games, did you see him getting 19 million a year for 2 years?
Well, he started off okay with the White Sox, and then he got traded a couple times, and the home runs exploded.
Yeah,
He ended up giving up 41 home runs on the season, and I
right.
think about half of those came after the trade deadline.
Yeah,
Okay, and I said he was traded twice. He was traded once, and then he was claimed once.
right.
So
He
he
was
really
traded
changed.
to
He
the
changed. Yeah,
Angels,
yeah,
and then the Indians picked him up.
yeah.
You
So
know,
he changed address twice, but he really the home runs just got out of control. And
yeah,
I imagine if the Red Sox sign him to that kind of money, they have an idea in mind for how they're going to help him fix those home run issues, or
yeah,
they think the home run issues were totally fluky. Because like if he gives up 41 home runs again, he's going to be really bad. I mean,
yeah.
there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I mean, there's no
Right.
way around that. So you probably have a plan in place in order to fix that. The past.
You would like to think, wouldn't you, with Bailey there, Breslow being a former pitcher, and this guy Bodie, that they discussed this
Yeah.
with Giolito before the deal was signed.
Right, right.
Yeah.
They probably shared ideas about how to combat that and things like that. So uh, it'll be interesting to track how that turns out. That was one of the guys that I was a little interested in on the Orioles for the
Yep.
Orioles. Just so,
But we knew they weren't going to pay
right,
top
but
dollar.
just but more as like a lottery ticket kind of
Yeah.
deal, not
Yeah.
240. Not in
Right.
that territory. So, yeah. What other interesting
Well,
moves did the Sox make?
so, well, of course, they traded Chris Sale and
Right,
took care in one foul swoop. They got rid of from their vantage point, a failed pickup,
right.
but even though he did help them a bit win a World Series,
Failed contract, I guess. Yeah.
failed contract extension, terrible. And they cleaned up their second base problem, which has been a problem since Dustin Pedroia got hurt
Mhm.
all those times. They got this Vaughn Grissom from the Braves. I thought it was a
Mhm.
great trade for both teams. Uh,
Yeah,
they also go
yeah,
ahead.
I have a hard time thinking that because I was actually at Chris Sale's last start of the season. It was in Baltimore,
Yep,
and I thought he looked really solid. Now the velocity isn't what it was in the past, and when you watch Sale, you sort of remember what it used to look like. But I thought he was pretty crisp in terms of his fastball command, his tempo. Uh, I thought that was all really good. And if you look at his last handful of starts of the season, last 4, 5, 6 starts, started to look like Chris Sale a little bit again.
yep.
And I'm sure that the Braves saw that and think that they can sort of have
And
him
look at
do
what
that.
the price for pitching is now,
Exactly.
and say,
Exactly.
you know what? Maybe we can get 80% of the old Chris Sale, and that would be more than valuable compared to what pitching price.
I think you're absolutely right. That's
Yeah.
probably exactly what they were thinking. And Alex Anthopoulos, the GM in Atlanta, is not a
Who
huge
just got
free
extended for 7 more years or something. Yeah.
very well deserved.
Yep.
And he's not in the business of getting into high profile free agent bidding wars. That's not what he's going to do.
No.
That's not his game. Getting something out of Chris Sale, the last little bit out of Chris Sale, that's more along the lines of what Alex Anthopoulos does. Now on the Boston side, the Vaughn Grissom edition, you probably know a little more about Grissom than I do. But he was supposed to be Atlanta's shortstop this past year. It just never really happened, right? He was beat out by Arsenal.
There were some issues where I think his assumptiveness that that position was his led to some little bit of bad blood, but I think the Braves were very smart to kind of gloss over it and never make a big deal out of it, and that increased his value. And he probably is a player that could use a fresh start and
Mhm.
will do very, very well in Boston. The Red Sox also added an outfielder from the St. Louis Cardinals, Tyler O'Neill,
Yep.
who we remember how famous he was last year for uh, their manager. What's his name? Oliver Marmot.
Yeah,
Was
that and
that the
that's
man?
not the and that wasn't the first time that Marmol had called him out publicly.
Yeah, yeah. He called him out on a play, claimed he didn't hustle.
Right.
I
He
looked
was
at the
not, yeah.
play. He wasn't going 100%, but it wasn't like he was going 50 or 60% either. You know.
Right.
But anyway, he's a Red Sox, and that'll take the place of Verdugo. And they also appear that they're letting Justin Turner walk, who I thought had a very good year with them, very affordable deal. But I guess with Devers signed to the big contract and Cassis at first and
Right.
third, they said we're going to need Yoshida to DH some
Right.
because that contract really looks like it was a mistake
Yeah,
to
he
make.
he he wore down
He was
in the
very
second half.
soft. Yeah,
Yeah, in the
very
second half
soft.
last year. There's no doubt about it. And at some point they just stopped playing him against lefties, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Pretty much. He was very soft the second half of the year. Two small things to point out about the Red Sox, or one small thing at least, is they picked up this guy. And again, when I see smart pitching people in an organization and then they pick up somebody that I'm scratching my head, this
Mhm.
guy they picked up yesterday, they signed him to a major league contract and have told him he's going to be a starter for them. Cooper Criswell, formerly of the uh, pitched a little bit with the Rays, hasn't had a lot of big league action, but I wouldn't discount him. He's a big 6'5", 6'6" guy. They may think that they got a project here. Might start the season in the minor leagues, but it wouldn't shock me. They've got some big plans for him. And then in that Verdugo deal, they picked up a relief pitcher named Greg Weissert, Weissert, whose minor league numbers kind of eye popping, and I think he got log jammed behind that Yankee bullpen with Marinaccio and Hamilton and Efros over the last 2 years. And he never really got a real shot at the big leagues. I have a feeling he's going to be an important part of their bullpen. Hey, I've got to do a spot for the Costas Inn. You're going to hang with me, and then we'll talk about Tampa Bay and
Mhm.
its relief pitcher they picked up yesterday, a Japanese pitcher that they. And we'll talk a little bit about the Orioles. Sound like a plan?
Sure.
All right. The Costas Inn, located at 4100 North Point Boulevard. They are one of the preeminent crab houses in town. That's sort of their reputation is built on that. I like to stress that in addition to great crabs, steamed crabs, crab cakes, crab soup, that it's a lot of the other things. Maybe you're going out with a party of 6 or 7 people and 4 people want to eat crabs, and you're saying, well, I got to chip in what my fair share is, and crabs are a little expensive. So I'm going to go like the economy route, and I'm going to look at one of those special Monday through Friday night. They've got 7 or 8 of them every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Like Costas Inn, whether it's seafood, chicken, or pasta or steak, they've got it there for you at the Costas Inn at really nice prices. Uh, you'll always have a good time at the Costas Inn. If you ever have a problem, Pete and Nick are there on the floor. Just ask for them by name and they'll help you out. The Costas Inn, great family atmosphere, 4100 North Point Boulevard. They've only been there for about 53, 54 years. Check them out and check out their website, thecostasin.com. Uh, right now, to finish up, the Tampa Bay Rays, Luke, um, they made that trade, an interesting trade with the Dodgers, where they gave up a once unbelievable pickup in Tyler Glasnow, who they picked up in the Chris Archer deal with
Hmm.
Pittsburgh, along with Austin Meadows and I think it was Shane Baz came in that too. I think he picked up all three of them for Chris Archer, who really didn't do much for the Pirates. But anyway, this guy, um, this guy, the two guys that they got for him for Tyler Glass now from the Dodgers, right-hander Ryan Pipiote and
Hmm.
an outfielder named Ronnie. Hold on, Ronnie Johnny DeLuca. Johnny DeLuca. Your thoughts on that deal?
Yeah, it was a very Rays move. You recall, I think about a year ago, when Glasnow was coming back from like full time from Tommy John,
Mm-hmm.
he signed a 1 year, $25 million extension for his last year of club control. And everyone who saw that number said
He'll
he's
end
going to
up a
be making
Dodger.
25 million from somebody, but it
Right.
ain't going to be the Rays. And so it was very predictable that
Yep.
this happened. And I thought they got a nice package, given that he only had 1 year of team control left. Pepio, I guarantee you that guy, if he stays healthy, he's going to be a very Rays starting pitcher. He's going to be
Yep.
a very effective Rays starting pitcher. So that wasn't at all surprising to me that they were able to flip Glass now into something decent. On one, somewhat expensive year remaining on his deal. And it seemed like Glasnow wanted to go to LA. He's a
Yep.
Southern California kid.
And he
And
got a big extension from the
yeah,
Dodgers.
and he got a really big extension from LA. So, but I've no doubt that the Rays are still going to be able to figure out without Glasnow. However, they do have a few starting pitchers who
They've
they
got
still don't
three
have.
major starting pitchers on the shelf this year.
Yeah, they're
They
not
got
going to have
Shane
it.
McClanahan. They've got uh, Drew Rasmussen, and they
Mhm.
got Jeffrey Springs.
Yeah.
All three of them out for the year.
Or are they coming back mid-season? Are they
I don't
done?
think any of the three of them are really
Okay.
definite to come back this season.
Okay, because and
If
so
not, it won't be like May. It might be like August for one
right,
of them.
right. So their internal depth is going to be tested from a pitching standpoint, but I've learned to not doubt the process down there.
Yeah. I mean, they've got Pepiote, who figures to
Mhm.
definitely be like slotted in as the 2 or 3 starter. Taj Bradley has not produced at all at the major league level. You'd like to think somebody with that pedigree is going to finally figure something out and give them, I'm not saying 180 innings, but maybe 110 fairly quality
Yeah.
innings. And then they've got Shane Baz. He's coming back because he had TJ surgery in 22. So
Hmm.
he might be back. And then I know I'm leaving somebody out. There was they had some starter last year. Oh, like Littell, Tim Littell, I think.
Yeah, Littell was really nice for them down the stretch.
Yeah, it was Zach
But I
Littell.
know who you're Aaron Savali and Zach Eflin.
Yeah, Zach. Wow, Zach. Boy, the Orioles should have such problems.
Yeah.
That's right. They do have Savali, Eflin, Epiote, and this guy Littell,
Hmm.
and then Bradley and Shane Baz. So not exactly like
And
they have
then and
no
then
candidates.
maybe at some point the cavalry returns.
Yeah, it's
So
possible. So anyway, interesting. They've done very little else. Do you expect any moves out of them? Because they obviously lost their most talented everyday player who very well may have played his last major league game, Wander Franco.
boy, that's a big elephant in the room, right?
Yeah.
That's a big matzo ball.
Yep.
Geez, I mean, how do you replace him? I can't. You can't count on him to
I
be.
always called him the big matzo ball. It's always
No.
my nickname for him.
Um, geez, I mean, like when he was going, I mean, he was one of the best players in the American League. And they, boy, I don't
That's
know.
a
I don't
that's
know
a
how
bad
you.
one.
Yeah,
The bad one. He is yet to be charged, but I it's a murky situation down there in the
I
Dominican
don't know how
Republic.
they can ever count on him to play another game for them.
I don't see how they can either. I don't see how they can either. Uh, is do they just go simply with Taylor Walls as their
They've got to
shortstop?
upgrade. They've got to
Yeah,
find, like, maybe in spring training they can make a move for a shortstop. They've got to do better than Taylor Walls. If they have designs on winning the American League East, you got to do better than him
yeah.
at
He's a
shortstop.
terrific defender, but
He can't hit.
he can't hit really worth a darn. They'll be interesting to watch because it's hard to see them paying Harold Ramirez what he's supposed to make in
Mhm.
arbitration this year. So we'll keep an eye on them. Let's get back to the Orioles now, second before we get out of here this week. Um, have they done enough in your estimation? Let's put two baskets out,
Mhm.
and one basket has Jackson Holiday as the opening day second baseman or shortstop.
Right.
And the other basket is Jackson Holiday back in the minor leagues. Given those two baskets, which one says, well, riding on basket one, that's a significant move, bringing Jackson Holiday in?
Ooh. Well, in one of those baskets, I guess your opening day second baseman would be, maybe like it's a Connor Norby type, if that's the case, like
Or
someone,
Westberg.
or Westberg. And then you have Urias
Or
playing
Westberg could be
third.
the third baseman, but right now they still have Ramon Urias.
Right, right. So, ooh, but as far as the position player side, I'm I will say that after the postseason and really after September, I was of the opinion that they needed some sort of versatile bat, like someone with a track record of success,
Like a Justin Turner.
like a Justin Turner, a veteran who has played a lot of postseason games, a
Yeah.
dog,
Yep.
but could also play that wasn't like stuck at one position, or could only play first base, DH. Someone like with some versatility, postseason experience, who has hit in the middle of a lineup before, like a veteran who's been through it before. I was of that opinion. And so I shouldn't necessarily come off that opinion now, that because now that we're a few months removed from it, it's easy to say, oh, they've got all this young talent. Um, but
Yeah, that's just all going to get better.
yeah,
It's not a chance in hell that anybody takes a step back. That's a
somebody's game is
problem.
going to go to hell. I
Yeah,
can tell you that. Like,
yeah.
and someone's going to get hurt, and stuff happens. So I guess I should lean on my opinion directly after they were eliminated from the playoffs, that they needed like a veteran presence in that lineup.
I'm in agreement with you. And to me, that player is still very affordable, and his name is Justin Turner. And I think he'd be right what the doctor ordered here. They feel they have enough offense by adding Holiday, and
And like,
Henderson getting better, Rutschman getting better,
Mayo coming up in the middle of the season.
Mountcastle
Yeah.
being the real Ryan Mountcastle. Um, I'm not so sure on
And
those
if
two
I'll tell you what, if they do add a bat, I think it'll probably be, I would not be surprised if it's an outfielder
men. Hmm.
who is capable of playing center field. Uh, I don't think you can simply hand wave away Cedric's September and say, oh, it was just a fluke.
Yeah.
Might not have been. I think some protection in center field is something that would be worthwhile for this team. And maybe that's Aaron.
Is Cowser enough of protection?
It's a very good question. And that's probably something that they're batting around in the warehouse right now.
Yeah. All right. Pitching wise, have they done enough? They did do a quick job at going out at an affordable price, and I stress the affordable price part. They got Craig Kimbrell. Is he enough in that bullpen to make up for what they're going to be missing from the mountain?
I would say no, but that's nothing against Kimbrel. I don't think anybody
Did
would.
still strike out 94 batters in 69 innings.
Yeah, yeah, and so I just don't think that anybody can make up for what the mountain brings, as you said.
Yeah.
It's going to have to be a group effort. I don't think that we really saw the full effect of what missing Felix would do in September. Like a lot of the games, they either won by a lot or they lost by a good bit. And like there weren't that many tight games in September, really. Like it was weird how that happened, where they just didn't have very many situations where that absolutely called for Felix Bautista.
Yeah.
And then in the postseason, obviously they never had a lead. So but I do think that this year we'll feel that a lot more than we did in September. It's yeah, I mean, geez. He was so good last year, man. He was so
Well,
good.
he was unbelievable. Unbelievable. All right. We're gonna put it on pause there. We'll be back with Ross and I will and Luke will be talking next Monday. We'll know then whether or not our Ravens are going to the Super Bowl. We thank you for joining us today. We've been brought to you by the Costas Inn, by Superbook Sports, and of course by AJ Michaels Heating and Air Conditioning. Check them out at ajmichaels.com. For Ross Grimsley, who's away on the Orioles cruise, for Luke Jackson, I'm Stan the Fan Charles. I'll be back later in the week with a Zoom Wednesday or Thursday afternoon with Eric Garfield, and I might try and do a football one with Mr. Stein Wednesday, Thursday. Stay tuned to that, and we'll let you go. Thank you, Luke. Talk to you soon.